Hey guys, tonight we begin not with a bedtime fable or a fairy tale, but with something far more gripping and tragic, the assassination that changed Rome forever. Because believe it or not, the line between patriot and traitor, between hero and villain, can be as thin as a single knife blade on a cold March morning. From marble Senate chambers to blood-stained conspiracies, this is Shakespeare's Julius Caesar reimagined, where togas become fascist uniforms and ancient betrayal echoes through the streets of 1940s Rome. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together into a world where honor battles ambition, and one man's death becomes a nation's nightmare. The year is 1943. Rome trembles under the weight of its own glory. The city burns with a fierce pride, marble columns rising like skeletal giants against a bruised Mediterranean sky. Fascist architecture dominates every plaza cold, geometric buildings adorned with the imperial eagle, its wings spread wide over banners that snap in the hot wind. The streets smell of diesel fuel, cigarette smoke, and anticipation. Through the Via dell'Impero, a motorcade approaches. Black vehicles with gleaming chrome grills roll slowly past crowds that line the cobblestones 5 deep on either side. Men in dark suits and military uniforms stand at attention. Women clutch handkerchiefs, their lips painted crimson, their eyes searching the approaching cars with desperate hope. Children perch on their fathers' shoulders, waving small flags bearing the ancient Roman fasces. Julius Caesar returns from North Africa victorious. His campaigns in Libya and Tunisia have crushed the resistance, expanded the empire's reach across the desert sands. Where other generals failed, he succeeded. Where others hesitated, he struck with precision and ruthless efficiency. Now Rome calls him home, and the city erupts with celebration. The lead vehicle slows at the Piazza Venezia. Caesar emerges, and the crowd's roar becomes a physical force. He is a tall man, broad-shouldered, his uniform immaculate despite the long journey. Medals gleam on his chest like captured stars. His hair, silver at the temples, is slicked back in the fashion of the times. His jaw is square, his eyes dark and penetrating, the eyes of a man who has stared down death and made it blink first. He raises one hand and silence falls like a guillotine blade. This is his gift complete, command of any room, any street, any nation. When Caesar speaks, even the wind seems to pause and listen. Rome, he begins, his voice carrying across the plaza without need of amplification. I have returned to you not as a conqueror seeking laurels, but as your servant bearing victory earned by the blood of your sons. The crowd erupts again. Photographers crouch and snap pictures, their flashbulbs creating bursts of artificial lightning. Newsreel cameras on tripods whir and click, capturing every moment for the theaters where citizens will watch these scenes before the evening's entertainment. But not everyone celebrates. At the edge of the crowd, partially obscured by a marble column, two men observe in silence. The first is Cassius Longinus, a thin man with hollow cheeks and restless eyes that never stop calculating. His suit is expensive but worn, his tie loosened at the collar. He smokes a cigarette, the ember glowing like a tiny warning beacon. His fingers drum against the column, in an irregular rhythm, the nervous energy of a brilliant mind that never rests. Beside him stands Marcus Brutus, younger, more composed, his bearing noble, even in civilian clothes. His face could have been carved by the ancient sculptor's patrician features, a high forehead, eyes that suggest both intelligence and a burden of conscience. He watches Caesar with an expression impossible to read, something between admiration and concern. Look at them, Cassius mutters, smoke curling from his lips. They worship him like the Caesars of old, like a god descended from Olympus to grace us mortals with his presence. Brutus remains silent, his gaze fixed on the scene before them. They forget, Cassius continues, his voice low and urgent, that we fought a war to prevent exactly this. We built institutions to protect us from the cult of personality. We created checks and balances so that no single man could rise above the state itself. He has given Rome victories, Brutus says quietly. The people are grateful. The people are cattle. Cassius snaps, then catches himself, glancing around to ensure no one heard. In these times, such words are dangerous. Forgive me. I mean only that gratitude can become chains. Today they cheer him for winning battles. Tomorrow they will accept anything he demands. And what will he demand, Brutus? What does a man like Caesar want when he already has everything? Brutus turns to face his companion. What are you suggesting, Cassius? I suggest nothing. I merely observe. Cassius drops his cigarette and grinds it under his heel. I observe that General Pompey once stood where Caesar stands now. I observe that our Senate, once the voice of Rome's conscience, grows quieter with each passing month. I observe that men who question Caesar's methods have a habit of disappearing into the night. You speak dangerously. I speak truth. And truth, my dear Brutus, is the most dangerous weapon of all in times like these. In the plaza, Caesar has finished his speech. The crowd presses forward, desperate to touch him, to be near greatness. His guards, stern men in black uniforms with silver insignia, form a protective barrier. Caesar moves through them like Moses parting the Red Sea, ascending the steps toward the palazzo where the council of ministers awaits. Come, Brutus says. We'll be late for the reception. Yes, Cassius agrees, a thin smile crossing his face. We must not be late. After all, we are loyal citizens of Rome, are we not? The two men slip into the crowd, shadows among shadows, as the sun begins its descent toward the Tiber. The reception hall glows with crystal chandeliers that cast dancing shadows across polished marble floors. Long tables draped in crimson cloth groan under the weight of fine wines, roasted meats, and delicacies imported from across the empire. The air is thick with cigar smoke and expensive perfume. Military officers in dress uniforms mingle with government ministers in dark suits. Their wives wear evening gowns that shimmer like liquid metal, their jewelry catching the light with each movement. Caesar holds court at the center of the room, surrounded by admirers who hang on his every word. He speaks of tank movements and supply lines with the casual confidence of a man discussing the weather. Mark Antony stands at his right hand younger than Caesar by 15 years, athletic and handsome, with slicked back dark hair and a smile that charms everyone it touches. He laughs at Caesar's jokes before anyone else, pours his wine before the glass empties, anticipates his needs like a devoted shadow. The key to the Tunisian campaign, Caesar explains to a circle of rapt listeners, was understanding that modern warfare is not about honor or glory. It is about logistics, timing, and the willingness to do what softer men cannot stomach. Brilliantly executed. Sir offers a portly minister, his jowls quivering with enthusiasm. Simply brilliant. You are too kind, Metellus, Caesar replies, though his tone suggests he believes the praise is entirely accurate. A general is only as good as his soldiers, and Rome's soldiers are the finest the world has ever produced. Across the room, Cassius watches this performance with barely concealed disgust. He stands beside a tall window overlooking the city, nursing a glass of whiskey. Brutus joins him, carrying 2 fresh drinks. You should smile more, Cassius, Brutus says softly. People will think you're not enjoying yourself. I'm not enjoying myself. I'm watching the death of everything our fathers fought to build. You're being dramatic. Am I? Cassius turned sharply. Do you not see it, Brutus? Look at them. These are supposed to be Rome's leaders, senators, ministers, military commanders. But they grovel before Caesar like altar boys before a cardinal. They've forgotten they were elected to represent the people, not to worship at the feet of a strong man. Brutus takes a long sip of his drink, his expression troubled. Caesar has earned their respect. Respect? Cassius laughs bitterly. This isn't respect, my friend. This is fear wrapped in flattery. Every man in this room knows that crossing Caesar means ending your career, if you're lucky. If you're unlucky, you simply disappear. Ask Senator Flavius about that. Oh, wait, you can't. He questioned Caesar's war expenditures 3 months ago. Now he's retired to a villa in the countryside, and no one has heard from him since. You're implying something monstrous. I'm implying nothing. I'm stating facts. Cassius moves closer, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. Brutus, you are perhaps the only man in Rome whose opinion Caesar values. Your family name carries weight. Your reputation for integrity is unmatched. If you were to speak, people would listen. Speak about what? About the danger of giving one man too much power. About the need to maintain our republican principles. About Brutus. Caesar's voice cuts through the crowd like a trumpet blast. Brutus, come here. I want you to meet Colonel Decius. He'll be overseeing security for next week's Senate session. Brutus hesitates, then sets down his glass. We'll speak later, he tells Cassius. As Brutus crosses the room, Cassius remains at the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. Behind him, he can see the whole scene playing out like Theodore Caesar, the star, Antony, the devoted understudy, and all the rest merely extras in a production they no longer control. A hand touches his shoulder. Cassius turns to find Casca, a scarred veteran with one eye slightly clouded from an old wound. He wears his military uniform loosely, the collar unbuttoned, his tie askew. There's something wild about him, something dangerous. Careful, Cassius, Casca mutters. Your face betrays your thoughts, and thoughts can be treasonous in these times. Since when did thinking become treason, Casca? Since Caesar decided it did. Casca pulls out a silver cigarette case, offers one to Cassius. They light up together, 2 conspirators sharing fire. I know what you're planning. Cassius goes rigid. I'm planning nothing. Don't play games. I've known you too long. Casca exhales smoke toward the chandelier. You're gathering men who share your concerns. Men who remember what Rome used to be before it became Caesar's personal empire. And if I were, then you'd need to know that I'm one of those men. Casca's good eye fixes on Cassius with fierce intensity. I fought in Greece, I fought in Albania. I fought in North Africa under Caesar himself. I saw what he does to cities that resist him. I saw what he does to his own officers when they question his orders. The man is brilliant, I grant you that. But brilliance without conscience is the most dangerous thing in the world. Cassius feels his heart hammering. This is not a conversation to have here. No, Casca agrees. But it's a conversation we need to have. Soon, before it's too late. He pauses, then adds, before he crowns himself emperor in all but name. Across the room, Caesar throws back his head and laughs at something Antony has said. The sound carries over all other noise, dominant and absolute. Tomorrow night, Cassius whispers. My apartment, 9 o'clock. Tell no one. Casca nods once, then disappears into the crowd. Cassius remains at the window, watching Rome's lights flicker in the darkness beyond. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbles. A storm is coming. The storm breaks just after midnight. Rain lashes the cobblestones, turning the streets of Rome into rivers of black water that reflect the occasional street lamp like drowned stars. Lightning splits the sky, illuminating the city in stark flashes of white that make the fascist architecture look even more severe, more oppressive. In Caesar's villa on the Palatine Hill, Calpurnia cannot sleep. She stands at the window of their bedroom, wrapped in a silk robe, watching the storm with troubled eyes. She is a beautiful woman, elegant in her late 30s, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. But tonight her face is drawn with worry, shadows under her eyes that speak of nights without rest. Behind her, Caesar lies sprawled across the bed, still in his dress shirt and trousers from the reception. He sleeps heavily, one arm flung across his face, his breathing deep and steady. Even in sleep, he commands space, takes more than his share of the bed, as he takes more than his share of everything. Thunder crashes directly overhead, and Calpurnia flinches. In the lightning's afterglow, she sees something that makes her blood run cold. A cat, soaked and wild-eyed, crouched on the villa's outer wall, yowling at the storm with an almost human voice. For a moment, in the distorted light, it looks larger than any cat should be, its shadow stretching across the courtyard like some ancient beast. Omens, she whispers to herself. Evil omens. She turns from the window and approaches the bed. Julius, she says softly, then louder. Julius, wake up. Caesar stirs, groaning. What is it? What time is it? I had a dream, Calpurnia says, sitting on the edge of the bed. Her hands tremble slightly. A terrible dream. Caesar props himself up on one elbow, his eyes still heavy with sleep. A dream? You wake me for a dream? Not just a dream, a vision. Her voice cracks with emotion. I saw you dead, Julius. I saw you lying in the Senate chamber, blood pooling around you like spilled wine. I saw your enemies standing over you with knives still dripping. For a moment, something flickers in Caesar's eyes, not fear exactly, but acknowledgement. Then it's gone, replaced by his usual confidence. My dear wife, he says, reaching to touch her cheek. You've been listening to too many old women's tales. The storm has unsettled you. This was more than the storm. I've felt it for weeks now, a darkness gathering around us. The way certain men look at you when they think you're not watching. The whispers that stop when I enter a room. Caesar swings his legs out of bed and stands, moving to the window. He lights a cigarette, the match flame briefly illuminating his face. Do you know what I learned in North Africa, Calpurnia? I learned that fear is contagious. One frightened man can infect an entire battalion, but so can confidence. If I show fear, If I hide from shadows and change my plans because of dreams, my enemies will sense weakness. I'm not asking you to show fear. I'm asking you to be careful. I am careful. He exhales smoke toward the ceiling. I have guards. I have Antony watching my back. I have informants throughout the city. If there were a genuine threat, I would know about it. Lightning flashes again, and in its light, Calpurnia can see her husband's profile strong, uncompromising, magnificent in his certainty. This is what she loves and fears about him in equal measure, his absolute conviction that he is untouchable. The Senate session next week, she says carefully. Perhaps you should postpone it. Postpone? Caesar turns to her, his expression hardening. Do you know what they're planning to offer me? The senators, in recognition of my victories, are going to grant me extraordinary powers. Powers to reshape Rome's future. I've worked toward this moment for 20 years, Calpurnia. I will not postpone it because my wife had a nightmare. Julius, the discussion is over. His tone is final, the voice he uses with subordinate officers. Go back to sleep. The storm will pass, and in the morning you'll see how foolish these fears are. Calpurnia rises, drawing her robe tighter around herself. She looks at her husband for a long moment, memorizing his face as if seeing him for the last time. I hope you're right, she says quietly, then leaves the room. Caesar remains at the window, smoking, watching the storm. But something in his wife's words has planted a seed of disquiet. He thinks of Cassius's calculating eyes at the reception. He thinks of Brutus's careful silences. He thinks of the way certain conversations died when he approached. A man doesn't survive as long as Caesar has without instincts, and his instincts are whispering warnings that his pride refuses to acknowledge. Another flash of lightning illuminates the city below. For just an instant, Caesar sees Rome as it truly is not, the eternal city of glory he imagines, but a powder keg waiting for a spark. Factions and counterfactions, loyalties that shift like sand, men whose ambitions match his own, but lack the power to achieve them, men who might do anything to stop him from becoming what he is destined to become. Caesar crushes out his cigarette and returns to bed, but sleep does not come easily. Outside, the storm continues its assault on Rome, and in apartments and villas scattered throughout the city, other men also lie awake, planning futures that cannot coexist. The night wears on, the rain does not stop, and in the darkness between lightning flashes, the ancient city holds its breath, waiting for whatever dawn will bring. Somewhere a clock strikes 3. In less than a week, the Senate will convene, and history, like a boulder balanced on a cliff's edge, waits for the slightest push to send it tumbling into chaos. 24 hours later, night falls on Rome like a heavy curtain. The storm has passed, leaving the streets washed clean, but the air still electric with tension. Cassius's apartment sits in a nondescript building in Trastevere, far from the grand government districts, far from prying eyes and listening ears. The apartment is spare, almost monastic. Bookshelves line the walls, crammed with volumes on history, philosophy, political theory. The windows are covered with heavy blackout curtains, officially to comply with air raid precautions, but tonight serving a more practical purpose: secrecy. Casca arrives first, slipping through the door like a ghost. He removes his wet overcoat, revealing his military uniform beneath. "Anyone follow you?" he asks. "I was careful," Cassius replies, pouring 2 glasses of grappa from a bottle on the sideboard. "I always am. Careful won't matter if Caesar's secret police are already watching us." They're watching everyone. That's the point. Cassius hands Casca a glass. The question is whether we're doing anything worth reporting yet. And officially, we're not. We're just old friends sharing drinks and conversation. A knock at the door, 3 raps. Pause, 2 more. The signal. Cassius opens it to admit Cena, a lean man with ink-stained fingers and the perpetually alert eyes of a journalist. He carries a leather satchel stuffed with papers. I brought the documents you requested, Cinna says, setting the satchel on the table. Copies of Caesar's military expenditure reports. The real ones, not the versions published for public consumption. How did you get these? Casca asks. I still have friends in the accounting office. Friends who remember when we had transparency in government? Cinna pulls out sheafs of paper covered in numbers. Look at this. In the past 18 months, Caesar has diverted over 40 million lira from the public treasury into what he calls special military projects. No oversight, no accountability. No one even knows what these projects are. Cassius studies the documents, his face grim. Weapons? Infrastructure? That's what we're meant to assume. But I have a source, someone I trust, who says Caesar has been using these funds to build a private security force. Not regular military, something else. Men whose loyalty is to Caesar personally, not to Rome. Another knock. This time it's Decius Brutus. No relation to Marcus Brutus despite the shared name. A square-jawed officer with prematurely gray hair. He's followed by Trebonius, older, with a face like weathered leather and the bearing of a man who has seen too much combat. We shouldn't all be here at once, Trebonius says, accepting the drink Cassius offers. If someone notices, let them notice, Casca interrupts. We're past the point of caution. Caesar grows stronger every day. By next week, after the Senate grants him emergency powers, it will be too late. Emergency powers that he'll never relinquish, Cinna adds. That's the pattern. Temporary measures that become permanent. Exceptional circumstances that somehow never end. The men gather around the table, their faces illuminated by the single lamp, shadows deepening the lines around their eyes and mouths. They look like what they are, conspirators in a conspiracy that could save Rome or destroy it, depending on whose version of history gets written. The question, Cassius says, lighting a fresh cigarette, is not whether Caesar must be stopped. That much is clear to everyone in this room. The question is how and when, and whether we have the courage to do what necessity demands. You're talking about assassination, Decius says flatly. The word hangs in the air like smoke. No one speaks for a long moment. I'm talking about saving the Republic, Cassius corrects. If Caesar's death is the price of that salvation, then yes, I'm prepared to pay it. The question is, are all of you? Trebonius drains his glass in one swallow. I fought beside Caesar in Greece. He saved my life at Durazzo, but the man I fought beside believed in something larger than himself. This Caesar, the one who returned from Africa, he's different. He's tasted absolute power, and now he's addicted to it. I'm in, Casca says simply. Whatever needs to be done. And I, Cinna agrees, Decius nods slowly. For Rome, not for personal gain or revenge, but for Rome. Then we're agreed in principle, Cassius says. But principle without action is just philosophy. We need a plan. More importantly, we need legitimacy. If this is seen as a mere power grab or personal vendetta, we'll be hunted down like common criminals. But if Rome's most respected citizen stands with us, if Marcus Brutus joins our cause, then this becomes something else entirely. It becomes a righteous act, a patriotic duty. Brutus? Trebonius shakes his head. He loves Caesar like a father. He loves Rome more, Cassius insists. I know him. I've known him since we were boys. Beneath all that careful neutrality, beneath all that philosophical reserve, beats the heart of a true republican. His ancestor overthrew the last king of Rome. That legacy weighs on him. Then why isn't he here tonight? Casca challenges. Because Marcus Brutus doesn't act rashly. He thinks, he deliberates. He weighs every option until he's certain of the moral high ground. Cassius stubs out his cigarette with emphasis. Our job is to make certain he reaches the right conclusion. And if he doesn't, then we proceed without him. But with him, we transform an assassination into an execution. We transform conspiracy into justice. Cassius looks at each man in turn. Give me 3 days. I'll bring Brutus to our side. Outside, Rome sleeps uneasily under a moonless sky. The next morning arrives cold and gray. Fog rolls off the Tiber, wrapping the ancient bridges in ghostly shrouds. Marcus Brutus walks alone through the forum, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his wool overcoat, his breath forming small clouds in the chill air. He passes beneath the massive columns of fascist government buildings, their facades decorated with quotations from ancient Rome carved in letters 3 feet high. The authority of the people is absolute, one reads. Brutus permits himself a bitter smile. The authority of the people. What authority do people have when one man controls the army, the treasury, and the apparatus of state? He finds himself at the ruins of the ancient forum, what remains of Republican Rome, preserved like a corpse in amber. Broken columns rise from the earth like accusations. Here, 2,000 years ago, Cicero spoke of liberty. Here, senators debated the fate of nations. Here, his ancestor, Lucius Junius Brutus, drove out the tyrant King Tarquin and established the republic that would conquer the world. Heavy thoughts for such an early hour, a voice says behind him. Brutus turns to find Cassius, wrapped in a dark scarf, a newspaper tucked under his arm. The encounter appears casual, accidental, but Brutus knows better. Cassius never does anything by accident. I come here sometimes, Brutus says, to remember what we were and what we might become again. Cassius moves to stand beside him, both men gazing at the ruins, or what we might lose forever. A pause. A car passes on the Via dei Fori Imperiali, its engine echoing off stone walls. You have something to say to me, Cassius. So say it. Cassius pulls out his cigarette case, offers one to Brutus, who declines. He lights his own, taking his time. Do you remember when we were students together? Before the wars, before the rise of strong men and emergency powers, we used to debate philosophy until dawn, the nature of justice, the duties of citizens, the difference between law and tyranny. I remember you always won the debates. Not always. You had the better arguments. I just spoke louder. Cassius exhales smoke into the fog. But here's a question worthy of those old debates. At what point does a protector become a tyrant? When does the guardian of the state become its enemy? You're speaking of Caesar. I'm speaking of the principle. The man is irrelevant. The man is never irrelevant, Cassius. That's where your philosophy fails. You see abstractions, power, tyranny, liberty. I see Julius Caesar, who fought beside my father, who mentored me, who trusts me perhaps more than anyone, and uses that trust as a chain around your neck. Cassius's voice hardens. Open your eyes, Brutus. Caesar doesn't have friends. He has tools. He has ornaments he wears to legitimize his rule. Your name, your reputation for integrity, these are useful to him. But the moment you cease to be useful, you'll discover how quickly affection turns to suspicion in a dictator's heart. Brutus's jaw tightens. You go too far. I don't go far enough. Look around you. Cassius gestures at the ruins, then at the modern buildings looming beyond them. Caesar is building an empire on the corpse of the Republic. Next week, the Senate will grant him powers unprecedented in modern Rome. Powers to rule by decree. Powers to override any law, any institution, any voice of opposition. And they'll do it because they're terrified of him, not because they believe it's right. The times demand strong leadership. The times always demand strong leadership. That's what tyrants say when they seize power, and what cowards say when they surrender it. Cassius drops his cigarette and crushes it under his heel. I have something to show you. He hands Brutus the newspaper. Page 3. Brutus unfolds it, finds the article. Senator Publius arrested on charges of treason. Evidence of conspiracy against the state. He looks up. I don't understand. Publius questioned Caesar's war expenditures in a closed Senate session. That was 6 days ago. 3 days ago, evidence was discovered. Today he's in custody, and his family doesn't know where. By week's end, he'll either confess to crimes he didn't commit or disappear entirely. You can't prove Caesar ordered this. Of course I can't prove it. That's the genius of the system. Caesar never dirties his own hands. He has Antony, who has subordinates, who have agents, who arrange these convenient discoveries of evidence. The chain is long enough that no one can trace it back to the source. But we all know where it originates. Brutus stares at the newspaper, his face troubled. Around them, the fog thickens, reducing visibility to a few dozen yards. They might be alone in the world, two men arguing over the fate of civilization, while Rome itself vanishes into white void. What do you want from me, Cassius? I want you to be who you are. I want you to remember your name, your lineage, your duty. Your ancestor liberated Rome from tyranny. Why? Oh, have that same blood, that same obligation. Cassius moved closer, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. There are men, good men, patriots who are prepared to act. But they need leadership. They need someone whose name carries moral weight. They need Marcus Brutus. Act how? You know how. The words hang between them like a blade. Brutus turns away, his shoulders hunched against more than the cold. What you're suggesting, it's murder. It's surgery. Rome is sick, and Caesar is the disease. Yes, the operation will be bloody. Yes, it will be traumatic. But the alternative is watching the patient die by degrees while we comfort ourselves that at least we kept our hands clean. There must be another way. Name it. Brutus has no answer. In the distance, church bells ring the hour, 8 o'clock. Rome awakens to another day of carefully maintained normality. Think about it, Cassius says, stepping back. That's all I ask. Think about what kind of Rome you want to live in. What kind of Rome you want to bequeath to future generations. He pauses. Your wife, Portia, what will her life be like under Caesar's empire? The mention of Portia strikes deep. Brutus's expression darkens. Tomorrow night, Cassius continues, my apartment. 9 o'clock. Just to talk. Just to hear what others think. You owe yourself that much. Before Brutus can respond, Cassius melts into the fog, leaving him alone among the ruins of the Republic. That evening, Brutus returns home to find his wife waiting in the study. Portia sits in the leather armchair by the fire, a book forgotten in her lap, her eyes fixed on the doorway as if she has been watching for him for hours. She is a striking woman, intelligent and perceptive, with dark eyes that miss nothing. The daughter of Cato, the great Republican philosopher who chose death over surrender to dictatorship. She carries her father's fierce independence in her bearing. Her hair is pinned back severely, and she wears a simple dress. She has never cared for the fashionable excess of Rome's elite. "You've been walking," she says. Not a question. An observation. I needed to think. Brutus removes his overcoat, hangs it carefully on the brass hook by the door. He moves to the sideboard and pours himself a brandy, his movements mechanical, his mind elsewhere. "You've been walking a great deal lately, thinking a great deal, and sleeping very little." Portia rises, approaches him. "Marcus, we have been married 7 years. I know when something is troubling you. I know when the weight of the world sits on your shoulders." "The weight of the world," Brutus repeats, taking a drink. An apt phrase. "Tell me." He looks at her, this woman who knows him better than anyone, and for a moment he considers unburdening himself completely. But the words he would need to speak are too dangerous. In Rome today, even wives can be interrogated. Even marriages can be infiltrated. "I cannot," he says finally. "Not yet." Portia's expression hardens. She crosses to the door, closes it firmly, then returns to stand directly before him. "Do you remember what I did to prove I could be trusted? When we first wed and you kept secrets, thinking to protect me?" She pushes up her sleeve, revealing a long scar on her forearm. "I wounded myself to show I could bear pain without breaking. I am Cato's daughter, Marcus. I am not some delicate flower that wilts at the first storm. If you are in danger, I have the right to know. If you are planning something, don't." Brutus sets down his glass with more force than intended. "Don't finish that sentence. For your own safety, don't." "My safety?" Portia laughs, but there is no humor in it. "My father chose honor over safety. He chose death over living in a world where one man's will replace law. I am prepared to make the same choice." "I know." Brutus takes her hands in his, feeling the strength in them. "That's what terrifies me. You would follow me into any abyss, and I will not be responsible for leading you there. Then lead us both away from it. Refuse whatever Cassius is asking of you." So she knows. Of course she knows. She has always been able to read him like text on a page. It's not that simple. It never is. Portia touches his face gently. But sometimes the right choice is the simple one. Walk away, Marcus. Whatever is being planned, distance yourself from it. We can leave Rome. We have property in the countryside. We could run. Brutus pulls away. Hide while Rome transforms into something unrecognizable. My ancestor didn't run when faced with tyranny. He acted. Your ancestor lived 2,000 years ago in a different world with different stakes. The stakes are exactly the same: freedom or slavery, republic or empire. The choice between being citizens or subjects. Brutus paces the room, his agitation growing. "Do you know what Caesar plans? After the Senate grants him emergency powers, he intends to restructure the entire government. The military will answer to him alone. The courts will be streamlined, which means judges who question his policies will be removed. The press will be regulated, which means newspapers that criticize him will be shut down. Within a year, maybe less, Rome will be his personal kingdom, in everything but name. And if someone stops him, if Caesar falls, Portia's voice is steady, but her eyes betray her fear. What then? Civil war? Chaos? Blood running in the streets while rival factions tear the city apart? Perhaps. Or perhaps Rome remembers what it once was. Perhaps the Republic, given the chance, can be reborn. Perhaps is a dangerous word to build a future on. They stand facing each other across the study, the fire crackling in the grate, shadows dancing on the walls. Outside, Rome continues its evening rituals, cars passing, distant voices, the eternal sound of a city that has survived emperors and invasions and would survive whatever comes next. I have to go somewhere tomorrow night, Brutus says finally. A meeting. When I return, I'll know what must be done. And if what must be done is terrible, then I'll do it anyway, because the alternative is worse. Portia closes her eyes briefly, then nods. I knew when I married you that honor would always come before safety. I just hoped we would have more years before that bill came due. She kisses him softly. Whatever you decide, I stand with you. To the end. To the end, Brutus echoes. She leaves him alone in the study. He stands by the fire, watching the flames consume the wood, thinking about all the ways a man can burn. Across the city, in his villa on Palatine Hill, Caesar sits at his desk, reviewing documents by lamplight, reports from his intelligence network, lists of senators and their likely votes, plans for the new Rome he will build once the last obstacles are removed. Mark Antony enters without knocking, carrying a folder. The latest surveillance reports, sir. Caesar glances up. Anything concerning? Cassius has been more active lately, meeting with various individuals. The pattern suggests organization. Cassius. Caesar leans back in his chair. That lean and hungry look. He thinks too much. Such men are dangerous. Should we bring him in for questioning? No, not yet. Let him gather his little circle of malcontents. Better to know where they are than have them scatter and go underground. Caesar smiles thinly. Besides, as long as Brutus remains neutral, Cassius is harmless. Just noise without substance. And if Brutus joins him, he won't. Brutus loves me. Caesar returns to his papers, dismissing the concern. He may have doubts, may wrestle with his conscience, but in the end, personal loyalty will triumph over abstract principles. It always does. Antony nods, though something in his expression suggests he is less certain. The night deepens. Rome sleeps. And tomorrow brings Brutus one day closer to a choice that will echo through history. The following night, Brutus climbs the stairs to Cassius' apartment with the slow, deliberate steps of a man ascending a gallows. Each footfall echoes in the narrow stairwell. Each breath tastes of decision and consequence. He reaches the door, pauses. His hand hovers over the wood, trembling almost imperceptibly. On the other side of this threshold lies treason or patriotism, depending on which side of history you stand. There is no middle ground. Once he enters, once he sits with these men and hears their plans, he crosses a line from which there is no return. Brutus knocks. Cassius opens the door immediately, as if he has been waiting with his hand on the knob. "You king," he says simply. Relief and triumph mingle in his voice. "I came to listen, nothing more. Of course, just to listen." Inside, the apartment is thick with cigarette smoke and tension. 6 men turn as Brutus enters. He recognizes them all: Casca, Cinna, Decius, Trebonius, and 2 others, Metellus Cimber, a former diplomat with silver hair and careful eyes, and Caius Ligurius, who wears the haunted look of a man recently released from one of Caesar's prison facilities. "Gentlemen," Cassius says, gesturing to Brutus, "I believe you all know Marcus Brutus, the most honorable man in Rome." The words hang heavy with implication. Honorable, as if honor were a weapon they could wield against Caesar. Brutus removes his coat, accepts a glass of wine he doesn't intend to drink. The men arrange themselves around the table, their faces illuminated by the single lamp, each one a steady and barely controlled intensity. "Before we begin," Brutus says, his voice cutting through the murmured greetings, "I need to understand exactly what is being proposed here. I need to hear it stated plainly, without euphemism or poetry." A moment of silence. Then Casca speaks, his scarred face impassive. "We intend to kill Julius Caesar. We intend to do it during the Senate session in 3 days. We intend to restore the Republic." There it is, the naked truth stripped of all pretense. "And you believe this will work?" Brutus asks. "You believe that killing one man will somehow undo years of institutional decay? That Rome will simply wake from Caesar's spell and return to republican virtue?" "No," Cassius says, surprising everyone. "We're not that naive. Killing Caesar doesn't solve all of Rome's problems, but it solves the most immediate one. It removes a man who has concentrated too much power in too few hands. What comes after, that's for Rome to decide. For the people, through their legitimate institutions, to determine." "And what about Antony?" Brutus challenges. "Caesar's loyal dog. The moment Caesar falls, Antony will mobilize the military against us. Then we kill Antony too," Casca says bluntly. "We kill everyone in Caesar's inner circle. We cut off all the heads of the Hydra at once." "No." The word comes from Brutus with unexpected force. All eyes turn to him. "If we do this, if we take this terrible action, it cannot be a massacre. It cannot be a purge. We are not assassins settling scores. We are surgeons removing a cancer. Caesar alone. No one else. Antony is dangerous," Trebonius argues. "Antony without Caesar is nothing. He's charismatic, yes. Loyal, certainly. But he lacks Caesar's strategic mind, his political instincts. Without his patron, Antony will be just another ambitious man in a city full of them." Brutus sets down his untouched wine. "But more importantly, if we kill everyone in Caesar's circle, we prove Caesar right. We prove that the only thing that matters is power, and that we're willing to do anything to seize it. We become exactly what we claim to oppose. The logic is undeniable." Even Casca nods grudgingly. "Then it's settled," Cassius says. "Caesar alone. During the Senate session, in front of witnesses, in the seat of government, where the symbolism is strongest." "How?" Brutus asks. The question acknowledges his participation, though he doesn't seem to realize it yet. Decius leans forward. "I'm overseeing security for the session. I can ensure that certain protocols are relaxed. No weapons search for senators. Guards positioned at the outer doors rather than inside the chamber itself. And I'll make certain Caesar actually attends," adds Metellus. "He's been wavering. His wife has been trying to convince him to postpone, claims she's had prophetic dreams. But if I feed him intelligence that the Senate is prepared to offer him even greater powers, perhaps, even a crown in all but name, his ambition will override his caution." "A crown," Brutus repeats bitterly. "That's what this has always been about, hasn't it? Caesar wants to be king. He wants to crown himself emperor and turn Rome into his personal dynasty. Which is why he must die, Cassius says quietly. Not out of hatred, not out of envy, but out of necessity. For Rome, the words echo the arguments Brutus has been having with himself for days. For Rome, the good of the many outweighing the life of one man, even if that man once showed him kindness, even if that man trusted him. If I do this, Brutus says slowly, if I join you in this action, I need your oath. Every one of you. This is not personal revenge. This is not about power or position. We do this for the Republic, and once it's done, we step back and let Rome's legitimate institutions function. We don't seize control. We don't install ourselves as the new rulers. We become citizens again, nothing more. One by one, the men nod their agreement. Hands are clasped. Oaths are sworn in low voices. Then I'm with you, Brutus says finally. May God forgive us all. The next 2 days pass in a fevered dream of final preparations. The conspirators move through Rome like ghosts, ordinary men conducting ordinary business, while beneath the surface they carry the weight of impending violence. Cassius barely sleeps. He chain smokes in his apartment, reviewing every detail, every contingency. Who will strike first? Who will block the doors? What words they will shout to justify their actions to the witnesses. Thus always to tyrants, perhaps, or simply liberty. One word to encapsulate everything they're fighting for. Casca cleans his knife each night, a military blade, standard issue, the kind thousands of soldiers carry. Nothing distinctive, nothing that could be traced back to any particular source. The steel gleams in lamplight as he tests the edge against his thumb, drawing a thin line of blood, sharp enough. Brutus spends long hours walking Rome's streets, saying goodbye to a city he may never see again. If the assassination succeeds, he might be hailed as a hero or hunted as a murderer. History will decide, but history is written by survivors, and survival is far from guaranteed. On the second day, a soothsayer appears in the forum. He is an old man, wizened and strange, with wild gray hair and eyes that seem to look through the world rather than at it. He wears robes that might have been fashionable in ancient Rome, incongruous against the modern fascist architecture. Caesar encounters him while walking with Antony and several guards. The old man steps directly into Caesar's path, showing no fear of the soldiers who immediately move to remove him. Caesar, the soothsayer calls in a voice like cracking parchment. Beware the Ides of March. Caesar stops. What did you say? The Ides of March. Beware. Danger comes on the Ides of March. The Ides, the 15th day of the month. The day of the Senate session. Tomorrow. Antony moves to drag the old man away, but Caesar raises a hand. Wait. He studies the soothsayer with curiosity rather than concern. You claim to see the future, old man. I see what must be seen. Blood, betrayal, the fall of eagles. Charming. Caesar smiles thinly. And what do you want for this warning? Money? A position in the government? I want nothing. I warn because I must. Beware the Ides of March. I'll take it under advisement. Caesar nods to his guards, who escort the soothsayer away, not roughly but firmly. As the old man is led off, he continues shouting his warning, his voice echoing off marble walls until distance swallows it. Madman, Antony mutters. The city is full of them lately, prophets and fortune-tellers on every corner. Fear makes people superstitious, Caesar says, resuming his walk. They sense change coming and try to interpret it through omens and portents. It's almost touching. But that night, alone in his study, Caesar finds himself thinking about the soothsayer's words. Beware the Ides of March, his wife's nightmares. The subtle shift he's noticed in how certain senators avoid his eyes. The reports Antony brings of suspicious meetings and whispered conversations. He pours himself a glass of wine and stares at the maps on his wall. Maps of Rome's territories, stretching from the Atlantic to the deserts of Libya. An empire in all but name, held together by force of will, his will. What happens to empires when the emperor falls? The question surprises him. He has never thought in terms of falling, only rising, expanding, conquering. But every empire in history has eventually crumbled. Every great man has eventually met his end. Is tomorrow his end? Is that why Calpurnia weeps in her sleep? Why soothsayers accost him in the forum? Why his instincts whisper warnings his pride refuses to hear? He drinks his wine, shakes off the moment of doubt. Tomorrow he will go to the Senate. Tomorrow they will offer him powers that will cement his legacy forever. And if there are men who plot against him, when has that not been true? Powerful men always have enemies. The key is to be stronger than your enemies, smarter, more ruthless. Caesar has always been all three. Across the city, Brutus lies awake beside his sleeping wife. Portia's breathing is soft and regular. Peaceful, he envies her that peace. His own mind churns with endless scenarios. What if Caesar doesn't attend? What if the guards intervene? What if the blade strikes wrong and Caesar lives? What if they succeed and in saving Rome from one tyrant, they unleash chaos that spawns a dozen worse ones? He thinks of his ancestor, Lucius Junius Brutus, who condemned his own sons to death for plotting to restore the monarchy. That Brutus put principle above blood, duty above love. Could he do the same? Tomorrow he will stab a man who trusted him, who mentored him, who, in some sense, loved him. For Rome, he tells himself, for the Republic, for future generations who will live free because of what we do tomorrow. The words ring hollow in the darkness, but he clings to them anyway, because they're all he has. The night crawls toward dawn. In windows throughout Rome, lights burn late as various conspirators, guards, Caesar himself, prepare for the day that will change everything. The Ides of March, March 15th, 1943. A date that will be remembered or forgotten, depending on what happens in the next 24 hours. The city holds its breath. The actors take their positions, and the curtain rises on the final act of Julius Caesar's life. Morning comes cold and gray, with low clouds that promise rain. In the streets, Romans go about their business unaware that they're living through history. A vendor sells newspapers. A woman hangs laundry. A child plays with a wooden toy soldier. Ordinary moments in an ordinary day that will become extraordinary by evening. The Senate chamber is a monument to fascist grandeur. Marble floors polished to mirror brightness. Walls adorned with enormous banners bearing the Roman eagle. Wings spread in eternal dominance. Rows of wooden benches arranged in a semicircle around a central podium where speakers address the assembly. High windows let in pale gray light that does nothing to warm the cold stone interior. Senators file in throughout the morning, exchanging greetings and pleasantries, unaware that some of the men they're speaking to carry knives beneath their togas, traditional garments worn for formal Senate sessions, an affectation Caesar insisted upon to link his regime to Rome's ancient glory. The conspirators arrive separately, unremarkably. Cassius enters with a group of senators, discussing agricultural policy. Casca comes alone, his military bearing drawing no special attention in a chamber full of former officers. Brutus arrives last, his face composed but pale, dark circles under his eyes betraying his sleepless night. They take their assigned seats scattered throughout the chamber. No clustering, no obvious coordination. Just senators attending another session. 10 o'clock passes. Then 11. Caesar has not arrived. Cassius feels sweat trickling down his spine despite the cold. Has he been warned? Has someone betrayed them? His hand drifts unconsciously toward the knife hidden in the folds of his toga. Then, at 11:30, a commotion at the entrance. Caesar's motorcade has arrived. Decius Brutus, who rode with Caesar, enters first and catches Cassius's eye. A tiny nod. It's happening. Caesar strides into the chamber with the confidence of a man who owns not just the room, but the entire city. He wears his military uniform rather than a toga, a deliberate break with tradition that reminds everyone of where his true power lies. Medals gleam on his chest. His officer's cap is tucked under one arm. Antony walks 3 paces behind him, flanked by guards who take positions at the chamber doors. The senators rise as one, a show of respect that has become indistinguishable from fear. "Gentlemen," Caesar says, ascending to the podium, "forgive my tardiness. Affairs of state are never ending." His smile is broad, magnanimous. "I understand you have matters to discuss that require my attention." Metellus Camber steps forward from the crowd. This is the signal. "Caesar, I come to petition you regarding my brother. He was exiled on charges I believe were unjust. I beg you to reconsider his case." Caesar's expression hardens slightly. "The matter was decided. I don't revisit settled issues, but if you would only review the evidence." Metellus moves closer, and other conspirators begin to converge, ostensibly to support the petition. "I said the matter is closed." Caesar's voice carries warning now. Casca and Cinna move to flank him. Decius approaches from the other side. Brutus rises from his bench, his hand sliding beneath his toga, fingers closing around the knife's handle. "Please, Caesar," Metellus continues, stepping even closer, now directly in front of Caesar, blocking his view of the approaching conspirators. "I beg you on bended knee." He drops to his knees and in the same motion grabs Caesar's arm. This is the moment. Casca strikes first, his blade flashing toward Caesar's neck. But Caesar is quick, turning at the last instant, so the knife tears through the shoulder of his uniform instead of his throat. What is this? Caesar shouts, shock and fury in his voice. "Casca, you..." Then Cinna's blade finds his side, and Decius's, and Trebonius's. The conspirators swarm him like wolves on a stag, their knives rising and falling in terrible rhythm. Caesar fights. He is strong, a lifetime soldier, and he battles them with bare hands, knocking Metellus backward, striking Casca across the face. His blood spatters the marble floor in dark crimson flowers. "Guards," Caesar bellows. "Antony." But the guards remain at the doors as Decius arranged. And Antony, seeing what is happening, makes a calculation. He turns and flees from the chamber, self-preservation over loyalty. Later, he will claim he went for reinforcements. But in this moment, he runs. Caesar staggers, turning in a circle as the blades continue their work. His uniform is soaked with blood. His breath comes in ragged gasps. He has been stabbed 17 times. Still he stands. Then he sees Brutus approaching, knife in hand. Their eyes meet. Recognition. betrayal, understanding. You too, Brutus? Caesar's voice is barely a whisper, all the strength draining from him. Not a question, a statement, an acknowledgement of the ultimate treachery. Brutus's hand trembles. Tears stream down his face. But his training, his conviction, his sense of duty, all of it carries him forward. He plunges the knife into Caesar's chest. Caesar's hand reaches up, touches Brutus's face gently, almost tenderly. Then his legs give way. He collapses at the base of the podium, his blood pooling around him, spreading across marble that has witnessed countless debates, but never murder. Julius Caesar, who conquered nations, who ruled Rome with absolute authority, who dreamed of empire eternal, dies on the floor of the Senate chamber at 56 years old. The conspirators stand in a circle around his body, chests heaving, hands covered in blood, their faces masks of horror and exhilaration. Liberty! Cassius shouts, raising his bloody knife. Rome is free. But his voice echoes strangely in the vast chamber, and the other senators, those not part of the conspiracy, stare at the corpse with expressions not of joy, but terror.
For 30 seconds, the Senate chamber exists in perfect silence. No one moves, no one breathes. The conspirators stand frozen around Caesar's corpse like a grotesque sculpture, their togas splattered with blood, their knives still dripping. Then pandemonium erupts. Senators scramble for the exits, shouting, pushing, stumbling over benches in their panic. Some scream for guards, others simply flee without a word, wanting only to put distance between themselves and this catastrophe. Within moments, the chamber empties until only the conspirators remain, standing amid the wreckage of their idealism. "We need to address the people," Brutus says, his voice hollow. He cannot stop staring at Caesar's body, at the pool of blood still spreading across the marble. "We need to explain what we've done before rumors spread." "Explain." Casca laughs a sharp, brittle sound. "How do you explain 23 stab wounds? How do you make murder look like patriotism?" "It was patriotism," Cassius snaps. "It was necessity. And if we don't control the narrative immediately, Antony and Caesar's loyalists will paint us as common assassins." He wipes his blade on his toga, leaving a crimson smear. "We go to the forum now. We speak to the citizens directly, tell them the truth, that we killed a tyrant to save the Republic." "Look at us," Trebonius says quietly. "We're covered in blood. We look like butchers. Then we look like what we armed who did what was necessary, no matter how terrible." Brutus forces steel into his voice. "Wash the blood from your hands if you must, but not from your blades. Let Rome see that we're not ashamed of our actions. Let them see that we acted openly in the seat of government for all to witness." The conspirators exchange glances. The enormity of what they've done is settling over them like a shroud. This was supposed to be the beginning of Rome's liberation. Instead, it feels like the beginning of something far darker. They exit the Senate chamber into gray afternoon light. News of the assassination has already spread through the government district like wildfire. People run through the streets in all directions. Some toward the Senate, drawn by morbid curiosity. Others away, seeking safety before violence spreads. Military vehicles appear at intersections, soldiers deploying with rifles ready, but they seem confused, lacking orders. Caesar's command structure has been decapitated. The officers don't know whether to arrest the conspirators, protect them, or simply maintain order until someone tells them what to do. The conspirators march toward the forum, walking down the center of the Via dei Fori Imperial. Citizens press against buildings, watching them pass with expressions ranging from shock to horror to something that might be approval. It's impossible to read which sentiment dominates. At the forum, a crowd has already gathered several hundred people, with more arriving every minute. Word has spread that the conspirators will explain themselves. Rome holds its breath, waiting to understand what has just happened to their world. Brutus climbs onto the speaker's platform, a raised stone dais where politicians have addressed crowds for centuries. His toga is still stained with Caesar's blood. His hands tremble slightly, but his voice, when he speaks, carries clearly across the plaza. Romans, he begins. Fellow citizens, I stand before you today having committed an act that will be judged by history. I and these men beside me have killed Julius Caesar. The crowd murmurs. Some gasp. Others nod as if they already knew. We did not do this for personal gain. We did not do this out of hatred or envy. We did this because Caesar had become what our republic was founded to prevent a dictator who placed his will above the law, his ambition above the good of Rome. Caesar gave us victories, someone shouts from the crowd. Caesar gave himself power, Brutus counters. Yes, he won battles. Yes, he expanded our territories. But at what cost? He dismantled our institutions. He silenced dissent, imprisoned or exiled anyone who questioned his methods, was transforming Rome from a republic of citizens into an empire of subjects. The crowd is listening now, truly listening. Brutus feels a flicker of hope. Perhaps they can make Rome understand. Perhaps this terrible act can be justified. Ask yourselves, would you rather live free as citizens with your voices heard and your rights protected? Or would you rather live as slaves to one man's vision, no matter how grand that vision might be? Would you rather have liberty with uncertainty or security with chains? Liberty, a voice calls out. Then another. A chant begins to build. Liberty. Liberty. But it's not universal. Other voices rise in opposition. Caesar was our protector. You murdered him. Traitors. The crowd begins to fracture. Different factions shouting at each other, pushing, jostling. Violence simmers just beneath the surface. Then a new sound cuts through the chaos, the roar of engines. 3 military trucks pull into the forum, carrying soldiers in full combat gear. They deploy in formation, rifles at the ready. And from the lead truck emerges Mark Antony. He has changed since fleeing the Senate chamber. He wears a black uniform now, an armband of mourning already wrapped around his sleeve. His face is set in an expression of controlled fury. Behind him, soldiers carry something draped in a crimson banner. Caesar's body. They place it on a makeshift bier in the center of the forum, directly in front of the speaker's platform where Brutus stands. Antony mounts the platform, and the 2 men the assassin and the loyalist face each other across 3 feet of stone. Are you finished? Antony asks quietly. Have you said your piece? Antony, because I have something to say as well. And unlike you, I won't dress butchery in the robes of philosophy.
Brutus steps aside, a gesture that costs him everything. Speak then. Rome deserves to hear all perspectives. How gracious, Antony says, his voice dripping with contempt. He turns to face the crowd, and his expression transforms. The fury melts into grief, raw and devastating. When he speaks, his voice cracks with emotion. Friends, Romans, countrymen, I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. Though God knows he deserves praise, Antony pauses, letting the words sink in. These men tell you Caesar was ambitious, that he threatened your liberty, that his death was necessary to save the Republic. And these are honorable men, are they not? Brutus is an honorable man. They all are honorable men. The repetition of honorable drips with sarcasm that isn't lost on the crowd. So let us accept what they say. Caesar was ambitious. Never mind that he brought wealth to Rome's treasury. Never mind that he built hospitals and schools. Never mind that when the poor cried, Caesar wept. Antony's voice rises, passion flooding through it. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. I have here, Antony pulls a document from his jacket, Caesar's will. Shall I read it? No, perhaps I shouldn't. It might upset you. It might make you question what these honorable men have done. Read it, voices call from the crowd. Read the will. Are you certain? It speaks of Caesar's love for Rome, his plans to distribute his personal wealth, millions of lira to every citizen, his intention to open his private estates as public parks where families could gather freely. Antony's eyes glisten with tears, but he was ambitious. These honorable men say so. He descends from the platform and moves to Caesar's body. With deliberate slowness, he pulls back the crimson banner, revealing the corpse beneath. The crowd gasps. Caesar's uniform is shredded, soaked with dried blood, the wounds clearly visible. "Look at him," Antony commands. "Look at what they did. Not in darkness, not in secrecy, but in the Senate chamber, in broad daylight. 23 wounds. 23 times they drove steel into his flesh." He points to specific injuries. Here's where Casca struck. Here Cinna. Here Trebonius. And here his finger hovers over the chest wound. Here's where Brutus, whom Caesar loved like a son, plunged his knife deepest. The crowd's mood shifts palpably. Anger replaces confusion. Grief replaces uncertainty. "But they are honorable men," Antony continues, his voice rising to a shout. "They tell you this was necessary, that one man's death buys Rome's freedom, so let us honor their logic. Let us celebrate this murder. Let us thank them for liberating us from a man who fed the hungry, who housed the homeless, who gave his life to making Rome great." "Traitors," someone screams. Then more voices join. "Murderers! Avenge Caesar! Kill the conspirators!" The crowd surges forward, a wave of rage directed at the platform where Brutus and the other conspirators stand. The soldiers Antony brought make no move to stop them. If anything, they step aside, clearing a path. "We need to leave," Cassius hisses, grabbing Brutus's arm. "Now, before they tear us apart." The conspirators scramble down from the platform, pushing through the edges of the mob. Hands grab at them. Someone spits. A rock flies past Casca's head, missing by inches. They break into a run, fleeing down side streets, while behind them the crowd's roar echoes off ancient stones. In the forum, Antony stands beside Caesar's body, watching the conspirators flee. His expression is calm now, calculating. He has done what he needed to do, turned the people against the assassins, transformed them from patriots into pariahs. A colonel approaches. "Sir, what are your orders?" "Seal the city. No one leaves Rome without authorization. Post guards at all major roads and train stations." Antony lights a cigarette, his hand steady. "And put out warrants for the arrest of all the conspirators. Charges: treason, murder, and conspiracy against the state." "All of them, sir? Even Brutus?" "Especially Brutus." Antony exhales smoke toward the gray sky. "Caesar loved him, which makes his betrayal the worst of all. I want him found. I want them all found. And I want them brought to justice. Dead or alive?" Antony considers the question. "Alive, if possible. The people will want trials. They'll want to see these honorable men answer for what they've done." He pauses. "But if they resist arrest, if they prove difficult to capture alive, well, justice takes many forms." The colonel salutes and moves off to relay orders. Around the forum, soldiers begin organizing, preparing for a manhunt that will sweep through Rome like a scythe through wheat. Antony remains with Caesar's body, one hand resting on the bier. "You were right about them, old friend," he murmurs. "You said Cassius was dangerous. You said conspiracy was brewing. But you thought Brutus would never turn against you. That was your one blind spot. You couldn't imagine that someone you loved could betray you." He straightens, drops his cigarette, crushes it under his boot heel. "Don't worry. I'll finish what you started. I'll build your empire, and I'll make sure everyone remembers that these men weren't heroes. They were murderers who killed the greatest Roman who ever lived." Above, the clouds finally break. Rain begins to fall, washing blood from marble, diluting the crimson pools into pale pink streams that run between cobblestones. The conspirators scatter like rats fleeing a sinking ship. They split up in the narrow streets of Trastevere, each man finding his own route through the labyrinth of alleyways and forgotten passages that honeycomb the ancient city. Brutus and Cassius stay together, moving through the rain-soaked darkness. They've abandoned their blood-stained togas, stolen workers' clothes from a laundry line, transformed themselves from senators into anonymous laborers. But no disguise can hide the hunted look in their eyes. They take refuge in a bombed-out building near the Tiber, a casualty of an air raid from months ago, never repaired, now home to rats and shadows. Through the shattered windows they can see military trucks prowling the streets, searchlights cutting through the rain like accusing fingers. "It's over," Cassius says, slumping against a crumbling wall. "Everything we fought for, gone, destroyed by one speech. Antony was better than we anticipated," Brutus admits, his voice hollow. "We thought without Caesar he would be nothing. We underestimated his cunning. We underestimated everything." Cassius pulls out a cigarette with shaking hands, struggles to light it in the damp air. "We thought killing Caesar would be enough. We thought the people would rally to the Republic's banner. We thought wrong. Outside they hear shouting. Soldiers moving through the neighborhood, kicking down doors, searching buildings. The net is tightening. We need to leave Rome," Brutus says. "Tonight, if possible. Get to the countryside. Regroup with whatever supporters remain. We can't fight from here." "Fight?" Cassius laughs bitterly. "Fight what? Antony has the military. He has the people. He has everything. And we have blood on our hands and nowhere to run." A door crashes open somewhere nearby. Voices bark commands. A woman screams. The sounds of occupation, of a city turning into a prison. Brutus moved to the window, peers carefully around the frame. In the street below, soldiers are dragging a man from his home, Cinna, the poet, he realizes with horror. Not Cinna, the conspirator, but someone who shares the name. The soldiers don't care. They beat him anyway, their rifle butts rising and falling, while the poet screams his innocence. "They're not even checking," Brutus whispers. "They're just arresting anyone whose name appears on the list. Anyone associated with us. Our families. Our friends. Everyone." The full weight of what they've unleashed settles over him like a burial shroud. They thought they were preventing tyranny. Instead, they've created conditions for something worse, chaos that will demand an even stronger hand to control it. Antony won't need to justify his crackdown. The conspirators have given him the perfect excuse to consolidate power beyond anything Caesar ever dreamed of. Cassius joins him at the window. Together they watch as more soldiers pour into the neighborhood, systematically working their way through every building. "Do you remember what we said in my apartment?" Cassius asks quietly. "That if we did this, we had to be willing to accept the consequences. That honor demanded we see it through, whatever came after." "I remember." "Did you mean it?" Brutus turns to face his old friend. In the dim light, Cassius looks ancient, worn down to nothing by the day's events. "They've aged a lifetime in a few hours." "I meant it," Brutus says. "I still mean it." "Good." Cassius reaches into his jacket, pulls out a pistol, a small caliber weapon, the kind officers carry. "Because I think we both know how this ends. Not today, perhaps, but soon. We can run for a while. We can hide. We can even try to fight. But Antony will find us eventually. And when he does, he doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to." Brutus thinks of Portia, prays she had time to leave the city before the arrests began. Thinks of the Rome he tried to save, now lost to him forever. Thinks of Caesar's face in that final moment, the betrayal and understanding in his eyes. We were right to do it, Brutus says, needing to hear the words aloud. Caesar was becoming a tyrant. We acted to preserve the Republic. Were we right? I don't know anymore. Cassius's voice is barely audible. Maybe Caesar was what Rome needed. Maybe we destroyed the only man capable of holding this empire together. Maybe in trying to prevent tyranny, we've guaranteed something worse. The soldiers are 3 buildings away now. 2 buildings. The beam of a searchlight sweeps across the wall above their heads. We need to move, Brutus says. There's a service tunnel that leads to the river. If we can reach it, you go, Cassius interrupts. I'll stay here. Create a diversion. Give you time to escape. Cassius, don't argue. One of us needs to survive to tell the real story. To make sure history knows we weren't villains. Whatever Antony claims. Cassius grips Brutus's shoulder. You're the honorable one, Brutus. You always were. If anyone can salvage meaning from this catastrophe, it's you. Before Brutus can respond, the building's front door explodes inward. Heavy boots thunder on the stairs. Voices shout commands. Military police. This building is being searched. All occupants show yourselves immediately. Cassius pushes Brutus toward a back passage. Go now. Brutus hesitates for one more second, memorizing his friend's face. Then he runs, disappearing into the darkness as soldiers burst into the room behind him. He hears Cassius's voice shouting defiance, hears gunfire, then nothing but his own footsteps echoing in the tunnel, carrying him away from everything he knew, everything he was, into an uncertain future where he will forever be remembered as the man who killed Caesar. Outside, Rome burns with a different kind of fire. Not the literal flames of warfare, but the cold, calculated burning of a purge. Antony's soldiers work through the night, arresting hundreds, seizing property, silencing anyone who might question the new order. By dawn, the conspiracy is broken. The conspirators are dead, captured, or in flight. And Rome, which they tried to save, has become the very thing they feared most, an empire ruled by force, where dissent is treason and loyalty is survival. The Republic died not with Caesar, but with the knives that killed him. 3 weeks pass. Rome transforms under Antony's iron grip. The streets are quieter now, subdued. Military checkpoints appear at every major intersection. Curfews are enforced with brutal efficiency. The newspapers, once diverse in their opinions, now speak with a single voice, Antony's voice. Caesar's assassination is portrayed not as political act, but as senseless murder. The conspirators not as patriots, but as traitors of the worst kind. Antony moves into Caesar's villa on Palatine Hill. He wears Caesar's medals, occupies Caesar's office, sits in Caesar's chair, but he is careful not to call himself Caesar's successor. Not yet. That would be too obvious, too crude. Instead, he positions himself as Rome's protector, the loyal soldier maintaining order until proper government can be restored. But everyone knows proper government will never be restored. The emergency powers Caesar sought are now Antony's. The military apparatus Caesar built now answers to Antony. The empire Caesar dreamed of is becoming Antony's reality. In a conference room in the government palace, Antony meets with his inner circle military commanders, intelligence officers, political operatives. Maps cover the table, marked with pins indicating conspirator sightings and suspected safe houses. Status report, Antony says, lighting a cigar. Colonel Lepidus, a stocky man with a bureaucrat's precision, consults his notes. Cassius is dead, killed resisting arrest. Casca was captured near the coast, trying to board a fishing boat. He is in custody awaiting trial. Cinna, Trebonius, and Metellus were found hiding in a monastery outside the city, also in custody. And Brutus, still at large? Last confirmed sighting was near Philippi, heading toward the mountains with approximately 50 followers, former soldiers, mostly. Men loyal to him personally. 50 men. Antony exhales smoke toward the ceiling. Hardly an army. An army doesn't need to be large to be dangerous, sir. Brutus's name still carries weight with certain segments of the military. If he's allowed to establish a base, to organize resistance, he could become a rallying point for every malcontent and idealist who thinks they can restore the old republic. Antony studies the map, tracing the route from Rome to Philippi with one finger. Then we don't allow him to establish a base. We end this quickly and definitively. He looks up at his assembled officers. I want 3 divisions mobilized, full combat readiness. We march on Philippi within 48 hours. 3 divisions for 50 men? Lepidus sounds surprised. 3 divisions to send a message, Antony corrects, to show that resistance is futile, that Rome's army, my army, is unified and unstoppable. He taps ash from his cigar. And when we find Brutus, I want him taken alive if possible. The people need to see him tried, convicted, and executed. They need that closure. And if he won't surrender, then we give him the same mercy he gave Caesar. Antony's expression hardens. None. Far from Rome, in the desolate hills near Philippi, Brutus and the remnants of his cause huddle in an abandoned quarry. They've been living rough, sleeping on stone, eating whatever they can scavenge or steal, always moving, always watching the horizon for signs of pursuit. Brutus has aged years in weeks. His hair, once dark, is now streaked with gray. His eyes are hollow, haunted by ghosts that won't leave him alone. He sees Caesar in his dreams every night, not angry, not accusatory, just watching him with sad understanding. The men who followed him are tired, dispirited. They believed in something once, but that belief is eroding under the grinding reality of life as fugitives. They whisper among themselves when they think Brutus can't hear. How long can they keep running? What's the point? Maybe they should surrender, throw themselves on Antony's mercy. There is no mercy, Brutus tells them when the whispers grow loud enough to demand response. Antony will execute every one of us, publicly and brutally. Our only choice is to keep moving, to survive, to wait for the moment when Rome remembers what we fought for. But he doesn't believe his own words anymore. Rome has already forgotten. Or worse, Rome has decided they were wrong. Decius Brutus, who escaped the initial crackdown, brings news from a contact in the city. He arrives at dusk, exhausted from days of travel, his clothes ragged and his face gaunt. Antony is coming, he reports, accepting water gratefully. 3 divisions. They left Rome yesterday. They'll be here in 2 days, maybe less. The men exchange glances. 50 against 3 divisions. The mathematics of defeat are simple. Then we move again, Brutus says. Further into the mountains, we can... Where? Decius interrupts, his voice sharp with desperation. Where do we go, Brutus? They have maps. They have scouts. They have resources we can't match. We're not an army. We're barely a squad. And every day more men slip away in the night, preferring to take their chances with Antony rather than die slowly out here. Would you prefer to die quickly in Rome, on a scaffold for a mob's entertainment? I'd prefer not to die at all. Decius stands, paces the quarry floor. We need to face reality. We killed Caesar to save the Republic. But all we did was pave the way for Antony to build something worse. We failed, Brutus. We failed completely. The only question now is whether we die admitting that failure or die pretending we're still fighting for something. The words echo off stone walls. No one contradicts him. Brutus looks at his men, these loyal, foolish, doomed men who followed him into catastrophe. He owes them honesty, at least. You're right, he says quietly. We failed. The admission hangs in the cold mountain air like a death sentence. The men stare at Brutus, waiting for more, needing more than just acknowledgement of defeat. We failed, Brutus continues, his voice gaining strength, but we failed trying to do something noble. We saw tyranny rising and we acted to stop it. That we failed doesn't make the attempt less worthy. That we created worse conditions doesn't mean Caesar wasn't dangerous. Noble failures still end in executions, mutters one of the soldiers, a young man barely 20. Then we make our end mean something. Brutus climbs onto a boulder, addressing them all. Antony is coming with overwhelming force. We cannot defeat him militarily, but we can deny him the spectacle he wants. We can deny him the satisfaction of parading us through Rome in chains, of turning our convictions into entertainment for the masses. What are you suggesting? Decius asks, though his expression says he already knows. We stand and fight, here tomorrow, when Antony's forces arrive. We fight knowing we cannot win, but fighting anyway, because some things matter more than survival. We die as free men, not as prisoners. And maybe someone somewhere will remember that we died for principle. The silence that follows is profound. These men are tired, hungry, defeated. But they're also soldiers, and soldiers understand the concept of a last stand. There's a strange comfort in it. No more running, no more uncertainty. Just one final battle, and then rest. I'm with you, Decius says finally. To the end. One by one, the others nod their agreement. They have followed Brutus this far. They will follow him one step further into whatever darkness waits beyond. That night, they prepare. They have few weapons, some rifles, a handful of pistols, knives. They position themselves in the quarry's natural defensive points, behind boulders and rock formations that will provide cover. They're under no illusions. This isn't a defensive position designed to win. It's a killing ground designed to make their deaths costly for their enemies. Brutus sits apart from the others, writing by lamplight on scraps of paper salvaged from his pockets. A letter to Portia, though he has no way to send it. Words explaining what he did and why, justifying the unjustifiable, seeking forgiveness for making her a widow. I loved him, he writes. I want you to understand that. I loved Caesar as a father, as a mentor, as a friend, but I loved Rome more. I loved the idea of a republic where no single man stands above the law. And when forced to choose between personal love and civic duty, I chose duty. History will call me traitor or patriot, depending on who writes the account. But you know me. You know my heart. Whatever name they give me, know that I acted according to my conscience. He folds the letter, tucks it inside his jacket, next to his heart. Perhaps someone will find it after. Perhaps not. It doesn't matter. Writing it was the point. Dawn comes cold and clear. In the valley below, movement becomes visible as the sun rises. Antony's army approaches not 3 divisions, but what looks like a full legion. Thousands of soldiers in precise formation. Tanks rumble along the mountain road. Artillery pieces are towed into position. Antony isn't taking chances. Through binoculars, Brutus can see the command vehicles, the officers conferring over maps, the methodical preparation for assault. This is professional military efficiency applied to the extermination of 50 desperate men. It's both impressive and obscene. He could have sent a single company, Decius observes, standing beside Brutus. We're no threat to a force that size. This is just theater. Everything Antony does is theater, Brutus replies. He's not here to defeat us. He's here to be seen defeating us, to show Rome that resistance is futile. Then let's give him a show he won't forget. The soldiers take their positions. They check their weapons one final time. They exchange quiet words, final words, the things men say when they know they're about to die. Some pray, some smoke cigarettes with shaking hands. Some simply stare at the approaching army with expressions of grim acceptance. In the valley, a loudspeaker crackles to life. Antony's voice, amplified across the hills, echoes off stone walls. Marcus Brutus, I know you can hear me. I'm offering you one final chance to surrender. Come down peacefully, you and your men, and you'll be given fair trial under Roman law. You have my word. Brutus picks up a rifle, chambers a round, and fires a single shot that kicks up dust 50 yards in front of the nearest tank. The answer is clear. Antony's voice returns, all false diplomacy gone. So be it. You've chosen martyrdom. I'll be happy to arrange it. Orders are shouted in the valley. Artillery crews scramble into position. Tank turrets swivel, finding range. Soldiers spread out in assault formation, advancing up the hillside in coordinated waves. Here they come, someone says unnecessarily. Brutus shoulders his rifle, sights down the barrel at the approaching soldiers. His hands are steady now. All doubt has burned away, leaving only clarity. This is how it ends, not with triumph or vindication, but with blood and stone and the knowledge that he did what he believed was right. For Rome, he says quietly. Then the artillery opens fire. The world explodes into fire and thunder. Artillery shells scream overhead, impacting against the quarry walls with concussive force that shakes the earth. Stone shatters, sending razor-sharp fragments spinning through the air. Dust and smoke fill the quarry, reducing visibility to nothing, turning day into choking twilight. Brutus's men return fire, their rifles cracking against the overwhelming roar of Antony's artillery. They're aiming at shadows, at movement half glimpsed through the smoke. Some shots find targets, soldiers cry out, fall, are dragged back by their comrades. But for every attacker who falls, 10 more advance. The tanks roll forward, their treads grinding over rock and scrub. Machine guns mounted on their turrets open up, tracer rounds cutting through the smoke like burning arrows. The quarry becomes a killing zone, nowhere safe, death arriving from every direction. Brutus fires methodically, each shot deliberate. He sees a young soldier stumble, clutch his leg, go down. Sees another drop his rifle and run. Sees the unstoppable tide of Antony's forces washing up the hillside like a steel flood. Beside him, Decius takes a round through the shoulder. He grunts, staggers, keeps firing with his remaining good arm. Not the way I pictured dying, he shouts over the din. But it'll do. Then a tank shell lands 10 feet away. The explosion lifts Decius off his feet and throws him against the quarry wall. He slides down, leaving a red smear on the stone, and doesn't move again. One by one, Brutus's men fall. Not dramatically, not heroically, but simply and finally. The mathematics of warfare are brutal and unyielding. 50 men cannot stand against thousands, no matter how righteous their cause. Brutus feels something hot tear through his side. He looks down, sees blood spreading across his shirt. The wound doesn't hurt, yet shock has numbed him, but he knows it's mortal. Knows his time is measured in minutes now, not hours. He retreats deeper into the quarry, stumbling over rubble and bodies. Around him, the last of his men are being overrun. He hears them crying out, surrendering, begging for mercy that may or may not come. The battle is over. They've lost. In a sheltered alcove, Brutus collapses against the stone wall. His rifle slips from numb fingers. Blood pools beneath him, warm and spreading. Through the smoke, he sees Antony's soldiers swarming the quarry, securing positions, checking bodies, taking prisoners. He reaches for his pistol. One bullet left. He could use it on himself, deny Antony the satisfaction of capture, of trial, of public execution. It would be the practical choice, the logical choice. But as his hand closes around the grip, he hesitates. Caesar's face appears in his mind one final time, not the dying Caesar, but the living one. The man who laughed and strategized and dreamed of empire. The man Brutus loved and killed. "I'm sorry," Brutus whispers to the ghost. "I thought I was saving Rome. I thought your death would mean something. But all I did was trade one tyrant for another." Footsteps crunch on gravel. Soldiers appear through the smoke, weapons raised, surrounding him. An officer pushes through them, young, crisp uniform, the arrogance of victory in his bearing. "Marcus Brutus?" the officer asks. Brutus lets the pistol fall from his hand. No more running, no more fighting. Just the end arriving at last. "I am. You're under arrest for treason and murder. By order of Mark Antony, protector of Rome." They drag him to his feet roughly. Pain explodes through his wounded side, but Brutus makes no sound. They bind his hands, march him down through the quarry, past the bodies of his men, past the smoking wreckage of his final stand. At the bottom, Antony waits beside his command vehicle. He's in full military regalia, medals gleaming, every inch the conquering general. When he sees Brutus bloodied, defeated, diminished, something like satisfaction crosses his face. "So it ends," Antony says. "It ends," Brutus agrees, "but not the way you think. You've won today, Antony, but you've inherited a poisoned chalice. Caesar's empire will consume you just as surely as it consumed him. Power that absolute corrupts absolutely. One day someone will do to you what we did to Caesar, and the cycle will continue." Perhaps Antony lights a cigarette, untroubled by the prophecy. "But that's a problem for tomorrow. Today I have Rome, I have the military, and I have you." He nods to the soldiers. "Put him with the other prisoners. We return to Rome immediately. The trials begin next week. They throw Brutus into a transport truck with the surviving conspirators, perhaps 20 men, all that remains of the 50 who made their stand. The truck's engine roars to life. They begin the long journey back to Rome, back to judgment, back to the end of everything. As they drive away from Philippi, Brutus looks through the truck's barred window at the mountain peaks receding into distance, the last place he was free. the last place he fought for something he believed in. The truck rolls on. Rome waits. And history, already writing its verdict, remembers only that Marcus Brutus killed the man who trusted him most. 3 months later, the trials conclude. The conspirators are convicted unanimously. They're executed in the Forum in front of crowds that cheer each death. Their names are stricken from public records. Their families are exiled or imprisoned. Their cause is erased from official memory. Antony consolidates power, becoming in all but name what Caesar aspired to be emperor of Rome. The Republic dies not with Caesar's assassination, but with the failure of those who killed him. And the empire they feared rises from the ashes of their idealism, stronger and darker than ever before. In the end, Brutus and his conspirators weren't wrong about the danger of tyranny. They were simply powerless to stop it. Their knives could kill a man, but not an idea. And the idea of empire, once born in Roman minds, could not be unthought. This is how republics fall not in darkness, but in daylight. Not through evil, but through fear. Not because no one fights, but because those who fight lose. Rome endures, but freedom does not.